All right. I'm here with Jeet Banerjee, and he is currently a digital marketing consultant and serial entrepreneur. How's it going, Jeet?
Hey, I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing good. Doing good. I'm excited to get, nitty gritty with your successes. But before we get there, let's talk about your background. What got you into business and entrepreneurship?
Yeah, absolutely. So we probably have to go back quite some time now. This was probably when I was like 16, 17 years old in high school. So I kind of grew up with like a very traditional family, like old school dad who was just like, oh, yep, you're 16 years old now. You want to go to the movies, you want to go to theme parks, whatever, you got to pay for all that stuff yourself. So he's like, go get a job, figure it out. So at a pretty young age, I started getting some odd jobs, things like that, just, anything that a high school kid can get their hands on. And I quickly realized, like, man, I absolutely cannot stand doing this. And my whole plan was, go to college, get a degree, and work a 9 to 5. And I was like, man, if I can't work 3 to 5 after school, how am I going to do a 9 to 5 later? And so I kind of started to panic at that point in my life and being like, oh, I don't think I can work a job. And so I started like researching and like reading forums and discussion boards about other people who felt the same way. And then this whole idea about starting your own business and entrepreneurship came. And after that, I've never looked back since.
Nice. Yeah, and I think there is this fun kind of change that happens where you feel like the oddball in those young age years where you're like, I can't fit into this sort of scheme that's going on here. I feel like left out. Like if you don't fit into that, and I went through it, I know dozens and dozens of other people that have described this sort of like weird identity crisis where you're not fitting into the normal rat race of the world. And it's so important for young people out there that, the forums that you're talking about were, many, many years ago. Now it's so widely available, right? Like it was
Hmm.
hard to find people, like-minded people back then. But now it's just abundant,
Hmm.
on
Yeah,
social.
absolutely.
Yeah. So let's talk about the first venture. Like you had these odd jobs to kind of get things going, get the entrepreneurship itch began. How did, what was the first venture?
Yeah, so the first venture, so once I kind of said like, okay, let me start my business, I kind of just started to think about like, okay, where could I start a business as a 17-year-old kid? And I was like, the only thing I really knew about at that time that I felt very comfortable with was like the internet, because I was always on the computer. I was a big gamer, talking to my friends on the internet, all that stuff. So I naturally kind of gravitated towards starting an online business. And the first business I started was just kind of like a multimedia web design agency. I had built some websites and things like that as hobbies earlier in my life, like when I was 13, 14 years old. So I had some experience with it. So I thought, okay, let me start there and let me start to kind of build a business around like web design and stuff like that. So I kind of started there. And then as I started getting some clients and customers and building their websites, naturally the next question these clients had was, okay, well, I've got a website, but I've got no traffic. So can you help me get traffic? And so I'd never thought about that and I'd never really done traffic on my own. But I thought, when someone is offering an opportunity, I was kind of in that mindset of, okay, let's take it. So I started saying, yeah, absolutely, I'll get you guys traffic. So I started doing marketing and learning digital marketing through some of these clients and finding traffic for them. And that was kind of my aha moment in the sense that I found like what I really loved because I liked making the websites and stuff like that. It was better than a 9 to 5 or a 3 to 5 at the time, but it wasn't like I'm obsessed with it where I'm like waking up in the middle of the night having dreams about it and just can't sleep because I love it. But once I started doing marketing, just that gratification of driving traffic and seeing your work kind of unfold, I became obsessed and in love with it. And so that's kind of what my main focus became in my first venture. Outside of the web design and building the websites was kind of we became a digital marketing agency, and yeah, so that's kind of where it went with the first venture.
Got it. Got it. And when it came to sort of I guess we could say the first success that you saw from like an exit, what was that business? Was that the immediate one after that? Was that, a couple after that? How did that work out?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was kind of the immediate business after that. So once I kind of felt very confident with marketing and I was seeing the results that I was getting for other clients, I kind of had this inclination to say, hey, if I can do it for other people, why don't I do it for something I build myself?
Hmm.
And so I had this idea of building a tech startup company where we would basically solve a lot of the problems that high school students have, because I had just kind of gone through this process myself with college admissions, not knowing what your chances of admission into universities are, or how to get scholarships, and the time with your counselor was so limited. So I essentially created this company called StatFuse with co-founder of mine who kind of handled like the technical side, so like the web development and software side, and I was kind of the head of marketing. And so that's kind of how we divvied up our founder roles. And yeah, so we basically built a platform and an algorithm. We got a patent on it, all that good stuff that would basically automate the process of students getting into colleges so they could go in there, upload their college applications, and basically get an instant result on what their odds of admission are, what things they can do better, how they can focus on certain strengths, certain weaknesses, and just guiding them through that process. So that was the first official company I started after the web design agency, and things took off pretty well. We kind of ran into some problems where we spent all the money we had, which was not much, in the software development side of things. So once it came to we were live, it was like, oh, we have no money to spend on marketing, so we had to get creative and think of organic ways to grow the brand and stuff like that. And so we were able to grow it to, well over 500,000 users. And in the beginning, we started with no marketing dollars, none of those things. And, eventually we got it to a point where we caught some eyes of some big players in the ed tech space, and we got acquired by a financial funding company. So basically what they did was they refinanced college student loans. Mm-hmm. So our product was perfect from a data standpoint for them to, get their funnel going early, like getting high school students into their funnel and kind of funneling them through funding, loans, refinancing, all that good stuff. So yeah.
Nice. And what were the kind of KPIs? What were the things that you guys were tracking? It sounds like 500,000 users. So like the user base was one that you were tracking. What were some other metrics?
I think the biggest metric for us that was the most attractive from like an other business standpoint was our data. Mm-hmm. Like we were getting an absolutely incredible amount of data on these individuals that are about to enter from being, high schoolers to entering like the adult space, like they're about to be adults. Like we knew what their hobbies were, what kind of sports they played, what kind of activities they did, where they lived, their scores on SATs, ACTs. We knew what strengths in their curriculum were, what weaknesses in their curriculum were. So I think the biggest metric for us, even outside of the signups, the users, and like the time spent on the platform and stuff, was the unbelievable amount of data that we were able to collect. As you could probably imagine, which is very, very valuable to a lot of businesses that, they're seeing an 18-year-old entering the market. And so, with that, there was a sense of like, having a great level of responsibility as well, because, there's a lot of people that wanted to acquire that data for bad purposes. Oh, let's get these kids on credit cards and let's do this and let's do that. So, but yeah, if there was any one thing that we realized late into the process that our value proposition was the data that we were collecting.
Nice. Yeah. And now looking back, I mean, data sets are just the gold mine nowadays with AI coming onto the scene. It's kind of really front running that entirely. And especially like as a lending company coming in, that makes perfect sense. Like all that data is so rich for them. So let's talk about tactics. How, in your experience, getting prepared for something like exiting that business, what types of tips can you share?
Yeah, absolutely. Because so when we started the business, we had no plans of getting acquired, never even thought about it. So when it came time to acquisition or time to getting acquired, we probably spent an extra 3 to 6 months that would have been, avoided or shortcutted if we had planned and prepared from the beginning. So some of the biggest pieces of advice that I would give other people is that even if you love your business day one and you don't think you're going to sell it or exit, just keep that as a backup plan that like, hey, if one day I do decide to go this route, here's some preparations I need to make. And a lot of it just comes down to documentation. So like SOPs, documenting things, and just thinking about it from a standpoint of like, if I'm not available, right, whether it's because I'm selling the business or because I'm handing it off to, some other employee or something, what are the things that I need to create and keep in place to efficiently do that kind of handoff? And so we spent probably 6 months just creating documentation because we had absolutely nothing from day one. So whether it was from software side of things, from marketing processes, from, operational processes. So that's one big tip that I will definitely share with people. And I think the second biggest tactic or thing is that a lot of people think like they can't reach out to get acquired. They think it's something that's just got to internally come into them. And they think like, it's not a good look if you reach out and stuff like that. And the funny thing for us is that we actually had other people that had reached out to us initially. But, whether it was the deal or maybe what their plans were for the company after taking over, we didn't agree with. We just kind of thought, hey, if we can get acquired and we got interest from these people, why not reach out to other companies in the industry? And, whether it's creating a bidding war, just seeing what they have to offer never hurts. And funny enough, that's how we ended up getting our deal done. It wasn't from one of the companies that had reached out to us. It was actually from an outgoing reach out that we did, set up a meeting, set up a conversation, told them, hey, this is where we think, we can fit into what you guys are doing, hearing about their plans. So those are probably the two biggest things that I would recommend to people is that, document and build a business that's easily transferable. And then the second thing is don't be scared to reach out to somebody else, especially if you think that they might be the perfect fit for your business, to say like, hey, are you guys interested in buying us out?
Nice. And with timing, I think this is probably the most frequent question about when is the right time to sell a business. For you, what was the rationale behind the timing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think timing, it's all individual to people because sometimes you have like exterior things going on in your life that maybe, you can't give your business the same attention, time, things like that. I think the biggest thing that really made me and my business partner at that time realize like, hey, maybe it's time to move on from this is that, we were very young, hungry entrepreneurs, but we were entering a space that is like in the Jurassic era, right? Education, when we were talking about dealing with high schools, government boards for education, it was so slow moving. It was so difficult for us to really like scale to getting to a point where, we're in every high school. We're, replacing counselors in high schools or counselors are utilizing our software and licensing. And that was kind of the realization point for us was that like, it's a matter of two things, right? We didn't have the patience and the time to, wait 20 years to implement this across everything. We wanted to move faster. And I think the second thing was also, we didn't necessarily have the connections that it takes to get into governments and break through into high schools and education. And once we realized that, it was like, we built something great, but if we want to take it to greater heights, we probably need to pass this on to somebody else that can, take it further than we have. And so that was kind of our realization point.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. And with negotiation, when it came to like the valuation, obviously like with a data set being the pretty much the key piece or key asset, what would you say around negotiation, like in terms of tips that you could share when you guys approached the financial institution or lender that acquired the business? What were some of the leverage points? Like what were some of the tricks that you used with negotiation?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the biggest thing I would say that helped us the most was that, since they weren't the first company we dealt with, or dealt with, we kind of had a good ballpark of what our real valuation is, right? Because in your head, you think you're worth something, and then you go out in the real world and you get, oh, okay, we're not worth that much. Everybody always hypes up their valuation. You're actually really worth this much. And so the big thing for us was having a couple offers on the table really told us like, okay, now I know how to negotiate this or what to negotiate. And, even moving forward on other acquisitions and stuff I've had, kind of the biggest thing I realized is taking out my self-bias is very important when looking into evaluation. So oftentimes I'll get someone that is an unbiased, somebody that just evaluates deals, right? Might not be even the company that I'm working to sell the business to, but just like an independent third party and be like, hey, talk to me and tell me low end, mid-range, high end, what am I worth? What is the value here? And we kind of had those numbers entering that negotiation with the financial refinance company, the student loan refi company. And I think that is the biggest thing that helps you in terms of negotiations, because a lot of times you can go into a negotiation, but if you don't have anything to fall back on or you don't have any leverage, like another offer or another person you've talked to, then you kind of don't know what you're doing. You might get taken advantage of and things like that. And for us, we were able to drive a hard bargain just because we knew, okay, we have other offers at XYZ amounts. So, if they want the company, this is our number, this is what we want. And if they don't want it, we're okay walking away with it, walking away from the deal too. And the biggest advice I give people when it comes to negotiation, it doesn't matter what it is, whether you're selling a business, marketing, anything, is you have to know what number or what outcome you're prepared to walk away from, right? And I think like car dealers and so many things in the world operate this way. If you don't have a walk away number, you're probably going to be taken away from a ride, right? And it's okay to not, walk away from every deal with a deal. And I think that's the biggest thing I would share with people is that it's okay. Sometimes the best deal is no deal.
Well said. Well said. So let's jump to the next venture. Like you exit this, and how soon after do you start up the next business, and what was that?
Yeah, absolutely. So after we sold the company, it wasn't like an acqui-hire type situation. So it wasn't like where we had to go. That was one of the big things that we also wanted to negotiate because, I definitely didn't want to work for someone. Like I didn't build a company just to go work for someone else after. So after that, I tried taking a few months off and just kind of, taking it slow, family, friends. That's what they told me. But I was just so bored and just like I needed something to do. So I kind of started looking into other markets, and I kind of wanted to see, okay, what are other markets that I can get into where I'm not going to have the issue of, dealing with governments or slow moving pieces, where I can be fast with my marketing and scale. And secondly, something that wasn't as tech and software driven. So, I could kind of have more control of being able to run the operations and not relying on someone else. So I kind of jumped into the e-commerce world. I started a home decor company in the e-commerce space. Direct to consumer. It was kind of like a drop ship model, but the difference was that I had manufacturers in the US that I'd partnered with on kind of a drop ship model. And so, yeah, that was kind of the second company. And I just started building that from the ground up, scratch up. I knew from a marketing standpoint that I would be able to do well with it. And I was really looking for an industry where, I thought there was a lot of demand, a lot of repeat purchases, and then also something that, could be a higher ticket, average order value type of business model. So that's what I jumped into.
Cool. Walk us through some of the metrics on that one, because I think a lot of times listeners are, they have done similar things where they're in different industries or in different spaces. And I think going to e-commerce is always interesting to me because the metrics are just dramatically different than, like, for example, the data set model of like a platform. So what were some of the things you were tracking? I heard repeat purchases as one.
Yeah, so the biggest metrics that I really cared about in the back end were repeat purchases, average order value, lifetime customer revenue. These were like three big metrics that I was looking into on the back end of things. And then on the front end of things, when I first started, I was a little bit greedier and a little bit more short-sighted in the way that I thought. So it was like, we ran a lot of marketing like Facebook ads, Instagram ads, TikTok ads, the works. And so with the advertising campaigns, it was like, oh, every time I put $1 into advertising, I need $2 back, right? So essentially a return on ad spend or a ROAS of like 2 or higher. That was kind of a key metric that I focused on early. But once I started getting back-end data of the lifetime customer value, the return purchases, the average order value, I thought to myself, wow, I could scale this business 10 times faster if I spend $1 on advertising, and even if my return is $1 on the other end, because of how much revenue I can make on the back end through, optimizing and running different campaigns, whether it's email, text message, and through recurring revenue, it would be massive. And so that's when I think everything really started changing and I really started exploding, because you can only scale so much. I tell a lot of people this, especially when it comes to e-commerce. It's really, really hard because of how competitive it is to scale so far. If you're like, some brands are able to do it, but most can't. If you're looking to make a net profit on every sale from the jump, but if you can find a model where you can, acquire a customer at break even and make money on them in the back end for the rest of your life, it's very, very big. And I think going off your point of data, it's once I used to think the same thing, that it was very different than a data model. But once I started looking at it as a data model company, everything changed for me, because it was like, I'm not paying $1 to acquire a customer for $1 to buy my product. I'm acquiring their information, their data, their phone number, their addresses, their emails. And with that, I can run affiliate offers in the back end. I can sell them other products, new launches, all of this other stuff. And that's what was really the game changer for me. And personally, like a lot of people undervalue the data in e-commerce. Like they only think about email and text. But one of the biggest revenue streams for me was I would get their addresses, right? Because I'm shipping them a product. So doing direct mail, right? Whether it's a little postcard in the mail or something like that, people have no idea how undervalued it is. It's very cheap to do, and it has an incredible return because everybody checks their mail, they open it, and I'm sure even if you're at home and you're going through the mail, you see everything. Whether you act on it or not is different, but you see everything that comes in the mail.
Very cool. Direct mail. I haven't heard that suggested at all, but I do remember early days of Dropbox. I remember I had coffee with one of the early employees at Dropbox, and they talked about how the two different funnels of growth, your new customer acquisition, what you're describing, and then your current expansion, like those two levers. And they really mastered that in the early days where they would get people in with like free storage, and then it was just upsell, 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 upsell. And it was constant trying to get those users in, and basically verbatim from what you described of like the two levers of growth, new and expansion. So really cool. And what happened with that business? Was that led to an exit, and what happened from there?
Yeah, absolutely. So that business led to an exit and an acquisition as well. So kind of got to a point where, I'd kind of scaled and grown the business pretty vastly, and I was having some big changes in life. I was moving, going, doing some different things. So kind of wanted to free up some more time because with a business like that, it was very time intensive. So kind of same thing. I was interested in getting acquired or selling that business. And kind of similar, like I said, this one was more like I came to the point where I was like, I want to sell this business, not where someone had reached out to me. So I kind of found a really good business broker that, manufactured and facilitated these types of transactions and deals. Put the business up for sale, kind of think of it as like selling your house, put it up for sale, make a listing, got some offers, and then, kind of negotiated the best one. Sold the business, took about 6 months or so as well to get everything done from the time that they saw the business to the time of the exit, where my hands are officially done with it. So yeah, kind of a similar process.
Nice. And how big was the team? Was it just you and a couple other freelancers, or how big did you scale up the team before the exit?
Yeah, so it was very interesting. So I didn't have any payroll employees. I had a lot of VAs and stuff out in the Philippines and stuff like that. So we probably had a team of about 30 people, probably 20 or so of them just focused on customer support, customer service. We had a couple designers that helped us create designs for our furniture, for our home decor. Used to help us with marketing campaigns, graphics, things of that nature. Had a couple operational people that kind of managed communications between things that were ongoing with us and customer inquiries and then the manufacturing facility. But because it was kind of like a drop ship model and I had no hold over the manufacturing side of things, it wasn't that big of a team. And it was a big blessing in disguise in that sense. No employees, not having to go to a manufacturing facility and manage it and buy materials and inventory. So it was a pretty lean team in that sense. So it was just me, sole owner, out here in the US. Yeah.
Nice. Very nice. So that leads to the finale. Knowing what you know now, what would you tell Jeet 10 years ago?
Oh man, probably the biggest thing that I would tell myself and tell anybody when I was younger is that change your stance and your look on failure. I think a lot of people think like failure is something that defines them. So a lot of people fail and they go, oh man, I'm not made out for this, or I can't do this. And they just end up quitting. I've been there before too. And if I hadn't, quit those times and, taken 3 months off because I quit and I thought I'm a failure and came back, I probably would have been even more successful and achieved even more. So the biggest thing I tell myself and other people is that failure is an event. It only defines you if you allow it to define yourself. Like I can fall right now, and if I get back up, I just fell at 12:30 in the afternoon, but it doesn't define me. I'm bouncing back from that. But if you just sit there on the floor and you allow it to define you, then that's going to be the last thing people remember. And I think everybody fails a million times. That's very, very successful. But people just remember the one time that they succeeded. And that's the beauty of business, right? You just have to be right one time. Like you could come up with 500 marketing campaigns that fail, but that 501st one, if it's a winner, people are going to remember you by that, and you're going to change your life. So that's what I tell people.
Well said. Well said. So what are you working on now?
Right now, so I've kind of taken a step back from building like these big companies myself. Right now, I'm kind of a marketing consultant. So anybody, brands, businesses, business owners that are looking for like digital marketing help, whether that's consultations or me kind of running their marketing campaigns, things of that nature. That's kind of what I'm doing right now, just independently.
Cool, cool. Where can people learn more about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So they can reach out to me on my website, jeetbanerjee.com, or I'm all over social media. Instagram is a great way to reach out to me. I check my DMs there pretty consecutively at the Jeet Banerjee on Instagram. And yeah,
Right on, right on. Well, those are all the questions I have for you. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story.
yeah, absolutely. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and wherever you guys are listening on iTunes or Spotify, the links that Jeet mentioned will be in these show notes.